welcome everyone back to the Authentic as Fog podcast. Welcome back, Jelena.
Hello.
When you say something that makes people go, I never thought of it that way, what you're essentially doing is you're allowing them to think a little bit differently than they used to, right? There's two ways you can teach somebody how to swim, right? I can teach somebody to swim by throwing them in the water so they get used to the water.
Mhm.
Or I can teach that somebody to swim by, making the water sacred, so they can't go in the water until they've learned how to do this, and like it takes them a long time to go in the water, right? For some people, like just throwing in them water is gonna make them traumatized and they never want to go in the water again. For some people, not putting them in the water will make them traumatized because they think, they think it's like such a big deal. So not going in the water is what's gonna get them to fear the water. Right. So the two completely opposite events can have a completely different outcome depending on the person. So what's the answer? Put them in the water or don't put them in the water? Right. Like if I say like that, that's something that everybody's going to agree with me. So once I've introduced that topic, something that they agree with, then I've gotten them to think like, oh, I never thought of it that way. But what I'm trying to do is, what is something that you already know that I can utilize to prove to you that that's true? Somebody can go through the same event and one person might be traumatized and one person might not. Ultimately, the only thing you're trying to do with this carousel is prove to people that some sort of a traumatic event could be traumatic or not traumatic. And that's all we need to know, really. We don't need to make this carousel any complex than that. We need to bring the carousel down to its simplest form, which is, what is the one thing that I'm trying to prove? It's simple. This event that looks traumatic could be healing. And this other event that looks healing could actually be traumatic. All I got to do is find what is the thing that everybody thinks is healing, but it's actually traumatic. And once I found that, game over. Does that make sense?
Can this example with swimming be something that is obvious?
I don't
Uh,
know.
because I don't think that it's like traumatic or healing. It can be traumatic or non-traumatic. Like
Well, that's why I don't know, because the other way, because the way I said it is, you throwing somebody just in the water when they're not ready could be traumatic, but also never letting them go near the water could also be traumatic too. And that I think
you
people will
could
agree with.
use one.
So I just need to come up with I know. I feel like you're just
How,
so getting carried away with trying to force find an example right now, but you're not gonna force find an example. I guarantee you. Because for me, examples are always very obvious. It's so obvious that it's like, oh yeah, I never thought of it that way. But like, whenever I try to force an example, then it always goes to a place where it's awkward and it doesn't really work well. It feels forced.
yeah,
It feels like I've
son, the problem is because I don't know when I am forcing it and when I'm trying to understand it. I cannot separate these two.
like right now we're trying to force it. Because what we're trying to do is, now I already have a point that I want to prove. And now I'm looking for an example that's forcing it. If you weren't forcing it, the way it would happen is, I don't even know if that's true. I don't even know if some traumatic events are healing and some healing events are traumatic. I don't even know. I'm not even gonna pretend to understand or know that. I'm just gonna let an example come across that will prove to me that if it's true or not. Right? Like, you already came up with the answer and now you're trying to find the proof. Whereas what I'm trying to say is, don't even think about the answer. Just wait for the proof first, and then see if there's
But
an
son,
answer there or
this is
not.
not helping me. This is the thing. It's not
Yeah,
helping me
because you're
to.
you're trying to force a narrative to to fit your point.
But what I'm trying to say, it's not. This is not helping me understand when I do that. I'm not aware. in my mind right now, I'm only aware because I started thinking about people that I've heard of that they were thrown to the water and to learn to swim, and I know a few people that actually learned um, to swim by that. So for them, this wasn't traumatic. They actually overcome it, and it helped them. So so I was thinking about that. If something is the same experience can be traumatic for some people and for some people not. So how we process that makes a difference. It sounded so simple, and I don't know that how this sounds to
I
you.
know, but I see the problem right now. Reason why I know you're forcing it is because you haven't dropped it yet. That's how I know you're forcing it.
What do you mean by
Just drop
haven't
it.
dropped it?
Who cares? Who cares whether this is right or this is right or it's because this is who cares? Just don't even think about it. Just go
Okay.
ahead and live your life because one day you're gonna be having a conversation with somebody, or you're gonna be listening to a podcast, or you're gonna be watching a movie, and some example is gonna present itself to you in front of you, where it's so obvious that if I asked 100 people, does this feel traumatic? They're gonna be like, yes, that feels traumatic. Oh, but then what about when this happens? They're gonna be like, oh, I never thought of it that way. There's gonna come an example that's so obvious to everyone that if you ask 100 people, does this feel traumatic? They're gonna say 100 of them are gonna say yes. And then if you ask those same 100 people, but can you see how this could actually be healing or helping, not traumatic? They're gonna be like, yes, that's true. And once you came to that moment, you're like, aha, oh, I got it now. Here's the example that proves to the world that something that can seem traumatic is actually not traumatic at all. Now that I have something that I can prove to the world, all 100 out of 100 people that I ask this question will say yes. Now I have that. Now I have a content. And now I can turn it into a carousel. But until that moment, don't even try to force yourself to come up with that.
Son, I hear you. Place where I think we are different is because, I imagine when you create your carousel, it's like you're making a throne for an example. So you have that throne and it's somewhere there. You can see it, you are living your life, and when you see the example, you can put that on your throne and you have your carousel. I don't have a throne. It's everything is like
Yeah, I
clashy
don't have
and
one either. Like I have a bunch of ideas, right? So one of my idea might be that there are things in life to everybody it's obvious that it's traumatic. But the truth is that it's not at all. It's actually not traumatic at all. But everybody thinks it's traumatic. Okay? So I don't know if there's something like that out there or not. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not going to I have a feeling that it might be true. I have a feeling that there are certain things that we think is traumatic when it's actually not. And I have a feeling that we think that certain events are helpful to us, but it's actually traumatic. I have a feeling that that might be happening, but I can't prove it. And I don't know for a fact if it's true or not. Now, do I have a feeling that there's some sort of an event out there that a lot of people went through? Let's say going swimming, birthday parties, or whatever it is. Do I have a feeling that there's some basic thing that we all went through that we don't think it was traumatic at all. But in reality, it was traumatic for all of us. Do we have something like that or not? I don't know. But if I do come across something like that at some point, what my brain is going to do is my brain is going to be like, ding, 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 ding. Oh, shit. Here's something that everybody thinks is not traumatic, but is actually very traumatic. Boom. Now I have an example for the statement that I want to make. But until I have that example, all I have is some statement that some people might agree with and some people might not agree with. That's all I got.
Mm-hmm.
Once I have that example, that's an obvious proof for the statement, then I have a myth truth sandwich. Do you understand what I mean? So right now, what I'm trying to say is, I think you have a bunch of statements which you believe is true. Okay? And you want to find a bunch of examples that will prove those statements to be true. But you haven't come up with those proofs yet. And then if you constantly work on those proofs, I think one day you will. But you can't force it. It's just those proofs just have to come to you. And now that I raised the question, maybe that proof will come to you one day, right? Because now your brain is going to be like, okay, what's a what's an everyday event that happens to every kid that is so traumatic, but we have no idea that is traumatic. But you see, like there's one thing that we're not even touching on right now is why does all this even matter? Do you understand what I mean? Is the whole purpose of this so that you can prove to the world that you have this thought, that you have this idea? Like, what is the point of it? And I just feel like that's where we need to start with. For me, right now, the the goal for me is to make you understand something you don't understand right now. That's my only goal.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have clear audience and I have a clear thing that I'm trying to communicate to this audience. Do you understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm going to keep coming back to, okay, so what's the point of all of this? Right. And for me, it's usually going to be there's an audience, there's somebody out there in the world who's struggling with something because they don't know something, which if I can explain to that person, uh, now they're not struggling with this thing anymore, right? That's the point, right? So that's why at the end of the day, it has to be tied to a point, because otherwise, what is it? Is it you just sitting in a room and coming up with ideas? Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yes. So your question is why I want to
Yeah, why come
why
up
I
with the
have
myth truth sandwich anyway
yeah.
to begin with?
I mean to see somebody changing their mind or thinking
I understand
through.
that. I understand that you understand that,
Okay.
but what I don't understand is I don't. I think I do understand that most people understand that they need to know who their audience is and who they're talking to and what they're saying. But I don't know if people really understand that. I think people say that they understand that. Okay, yeah, I know it's about the audience, but I don't think people really understand that. I think they okay, they'll say it out there, be like, oh yeah, it's like I need to know who my audience is and who I'm speaking to. But then I think deep inside, they're still focusing on the content. They're still focusing on
Mm-hmm.
what I need to say, not who needs to hear this. Do you understand what I mean? Because once
Yeah.
you know who needs to hear this, what you're gonna say changes, and how you say it also changes, depending on who you're saying it to. And that's why I keep saying you have to start with the who, not start with the what.
Yeah, I think that when I think about who I'm focusing on the most, um, I think that I'm talking to people that have some similar traits to myself, and I considered myself very naive. So when we did this week weaknesses,
Hmm.
um, I was thinking about one that I didn't mention actually, how it was easy to trick me with telling me something and I would believe whatever person would say. So I think that just because somebody told me something and I think that they have good intention and there's a truth there, it put me in many situations when I would be ridiculed because I believed somebody and they could tease me easily. So thinking, like critical thinking and thinking for myself, helped me to see layers of, like, still to be open for different experience and to listen, but also to have my own filters there. So I think that I want to help these people that are myself and that are like myself. That's my intention, because usually I would blame myself because I was naive, and I would take the blame, and I want to take this off other person because I think
Yeah,
I
then
needed that
okay, that's good.
also.
Then you know who you're speaking to, what they need to hear, and what are the obvious myths that they believe in, right?
Yeah.
And what are the all the wrong things that they believe in, and you can talk about all of those things. And what you just said is like pretty profound. Like there's like a balance between um so let's say on this end, you don't believe anyone. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what anyone says to you, automatically you don't believe them. You have to do your own research, you have to critically think, you have to logically think about everything yourself. And then maybe at the end you believe them, you come to the same conclusion, but you have to do it. You have to arrive at the conclusion on your own. You didn't just accept the answer. Okay. On
Yeah.
this hand, you just believe everyone. Doesn't matter. Anyone that comes to you says that whatever, you just believe them. Okay. And then there's everyone in between. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not good to be this person or this person, right? And then there's so now I've raised like a new idea to you. Now you can think about this. Like there's few different ways you can go with this, right? Because it can be a spectrum like this. On one hand, you don't believe anyone that anything anyone says. On the other hand, you believe everything that everyone says, and then somewhere in between, right? Like when you believe somebody, what happens is you can easily earn their trust. So when you've earned people's trust, they're gonna tell you more stuff, and they're gonna,
Mm-hmm.
like they're gonna trust you more too, right? Whereas
Yeah.
if you don't believe anything that anyone says, like you can never earn that person's trust ever, right? You'll always second guess themselves, second guess that person, or something like that. So in that sense, there's some sort of a problem happening there, like with teamwork, right? So there's that. Um, there's also the effect that there's no possible way, no matter how, even if you're the smartest person in the world, that you know everything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way you're gonna know more than 10,000 people combined. That's just impossible, physically impossible, right? So even if you are 100% right, if you're on this end of the spectrum, you could be wrong because you don't have all the information, right? So things like that, like, so there's, you know, so there's pros and cons. Like when as soon as you started telling me about that, there's pros and cons that come with that. Like I'm such a devil's advocate that people realize that it's really hard to earn my trust, for example.
Hmm.
And if it's really hard to earn somebody's trust, they're not even going to bother trying. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. So to me, it helped to critically think. This is what where I could filter an argument and see for myself. Even though if I believe something and okay, I'm open to this, let me hear this out. But after that, when the conversation is over, I think about okay, what was something that made me feel a little bit different, or so I'm participating actively with my brain as well. So it's not just accepting someone's truth because why would they lie? So I think it's that naive part. And also, if you combine that with being neurotic, it is a recipe for imposter syndrome because you will, everything you don't understand, or maybe if you made a mistake, everything comes back to you, and you are the one that is wrong, and then you can go to that path, never enough, always insecure. So I think that it would help me back then to know that it's not about just put your effort somewhere and you will be better, and this is all that it takes. Because when it happened, once I was 17 years old, and there was one event for church holiday, never mind. So I was asked to sing a song that I prepared for that, and I practiced it. I knew it by heart, so everything was ready. And the moment before I needed to go in front of people and to sing, I was so afraid. My heart was pumping. I was like, I cannot do this. This it's going to be bad. I know it's my voice is going to be shaky. And I asked this organizer, can I just not show up? Is that possible? He was like, no, you will be fine. I've heard you. Just go. And I was like, okay. And I went in front of people, and it was terrible to my ears. So it was so far from what I've practiced. And I mean, I don't know if that was really the case, but I noticed, even like, when you finish and people start clapping, you have a little bit of longer pause before people start clapping, because they kind of know, okay, she finished. Okay, let's applause, because this is what they should do. And so in my case, even though I forced it, okay, let's go through that fear, this even traumatized me even more. And after that, never accepted I've never accepted that again. So in my case, it needs to go slower, in my pace, and like to gradually get that confidence.
So then you have to, I think what I would do is then you have to put all of that into context. And that's why the myth truth sandwich is so important. So if you want to tell that to your audience, right,
Mm-hmm.
who's, let's say, like you, then you have to say, most people will say, so you have to start with the myth, right? So you have to say, Most people will say where there's a will, there's a way, or if you just try hard enough, that you'll make it,
Mm-hmm.
or you know what I mean? If you
Okay.
just have confidence. But the truth is that, you know, if you just throw somebody in the water, they might, you know, they might get trauma for water, right? If you just throw somebody on the stage, they might get trauma for stage fright, or you know, depending
Yeah.
on what it is. You that that activity of just do it might actually end up backfiring on that person, right? Depending on who it is,
Yeah.
right? So you would you would say, like, if you're like me, then don't just do it, right? Like, do it carefully, or something like that, right? Then it makes sense. Then the whole thing makes sense, because that is also true. There are some people out there who just, like, with sheer will or willpower or work, try to make something happen when it's clearly not working, right? But here's the reason why I said you need the myth and the truth, is because, and this is why the audience is also important, because you might think that that's how most people are, right? Oh, like, they're like, oh, I just have to try hard enough and blah blah blah. Well, that's not most people. That's a very small, tiny percent of minority percentage of people are actually working too hard or using their sheer willpower to make something happen when it's just not working for them. It's not most people. The reason why most people don't make it, the reason why most people don't become a public speaker, the reason why most people don't grow Instagram, the reason why most people don't become an entrepreneur, is not because they were traumatized or because they didn't, it's not because they put in too much willpower that didn't work. It's because they actually didn't put enough willpower. It's because they didn't put enough work. That's why. Do you understand what I mean? So what I'm trying to
Mm,
say is, your message might be correct for this people, but that's not majority of the people. If I look at majority of the people right now, the reason why they're not
mm-hmm.
succeeding is not because they were traumatized or they're doing the wrong thing, or it's just because they're not working hard enough. That's why.
Okay.
They're too lazy. Do you understand what I mean? So I just want to make sure that you don't give the wrong advice to the wrong people, is what I'm trying to say. And
Okay.
that's why the myth truth is so important,
So
right?
should I focus on people that are like me because that advice would be something helpful for me, or I should focus on majority?
No, people like you. But it'll only
Okay.
work if you start with the myth. It doesn't work without the myth. Do you understand what I mean? Because yes, there are people out there who believe that hard work is all they need, that they don't need anything else, when it's just not true. Do you understand what I mean? And then at the same time, there are people out there who thinks that hard work is not going to work for them. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why you need to give the myth first.
Okay.
I'm just talking about the importance of having the myth. It's just, I just feel like so many people are so focused on the advice, giving advice, giving advice, giving advice, that they don't even
Mm-hmm.
understand who they're giving advice to and what is this advice supposed to do. Do you understand what I mean? So before we focus on the advice, let's focus on the myth, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. And by focusing on the myth, you mean mentioning that in the beginning and making a lesson
Yeah, what do they
about.
believe in? Yeah.
Okay.
For example, like right now, the myth truth sandwich that you were trying to come up with, the myth is that people think that there are some events that are traumatic and some events that are healing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand what I mean? That's what they believe.
Yeah.
But the truth is, the same exact event could be both healing and traumatic. Do you understand
Yeah.
what I mean? That's the truth. Now, the last missing piece of the puzzle is, give me an example of that. Give me an example that will undeniably prove to me that this one event that most people think is completely harmless is actually super traumatic.
If I think about my example, when um, a child knows a song and then a relative few relative come to visit them, and then their mom said, show them what you told me today, and they kind of embrace for them to speak, and actually shy children are even more terrified, and then it's a disaster, and they even less want to share it, something like that.
Yeah.
So.
So next
Yeah.
time you're gonna find out, right? Like next time you hear a study about that topic, or you read a study about that
Hmm.
topic, or you listen to a podcast about it, you're gonna listen very closely. And then you like now that you're saying that, like now I really want to know. Okay, was there a study about this where they took 1,000 kids, where and just told them to like, oh, just do that in front of your uncle, and see how they reacted. And over time, did it make them more confident or less confident? They're like, I want to know the study. What happened? Right now, we're just assuming it. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say to you is, right now, you don't even know 100% for sure what you're trying to sell.
Okay.
Do you
So you
understand what I
know
mean?
what thing? Yeah, I
And what you're
hear you.
trying to sell is not the same as what you think you're trying to sell. I think you think you're trying to sell the fact that the event itself is detached from trauma or healing, right? That the same event can be
Hmm.
traumatic or healing too. That's what you think you're
Yeah.
trying to sell. But no, that's not what
Yeah.
you're trying to sell. Okay? Do you understand that? What you're actually really trying to sell is the fact that it's much more extreme than that. What you're really trying to sell is you're trying to prove to everyone that there's something in your life that you might not realize is traumatic, but it's extremely traumatic, and you don't even know it. That's what you're really trying to sell,
Hmm.
which is a much more
Hmm.
extreme version of the first thing. Do you understand what the difference is?
Yeah. Yeah.
The first is just an idea. I'm trying to sell you on an idea, and the idea seems logical. The second is I'm trying to sell you an undeniable proof. Do you understand what I mean? That's why it's much harder.
Yeah.
So, Jelena, can you give me an undeniable proof that there's something that every child does in the world that's extremely traumatic for them, but we don't even know it? See, now I got you thinking. Or it could be the other way around, right? Something that we think might be extremely traumatic for them, but actually it's not. It's helping them, right?
There's, I don't know if it's a good example. So it's probably not a good example. When there is older kid and the younger kid, and parents want to give to the older kid the fact that they're important by saying you are now the big brother, big sister, and you need to
Hmm.
take care of. So they want to bring them autonomy, but actually those children, this is such a burden for them because then they cannot play freely. They need to pay attention. Where is the little kid? They need to bring them with them with their older friends. So later in life, they are they cannot relax because they are from early age learned to be responsible one, and there is never time for them to be a child. So what do you think?
Yeah, that could be one. Like that's kind of like how older siblings are, right, compared to the younger ones.
Yeah.
Like they never had a chance to be a child or something like that. So yeah, maybe that's one. So just make sure that that is really the case, though, right?
Okay, so
Because maybe it's
what do you
not
mean?
true. Maybe it's not true, right? Maybe it doesn't affect most kids. Like what you're trying to do is you've already accepted that what you're saying is true, and now you're trying to
Mhm.
come up with the examples to fit your statement. I guess what I'm trying to say to you is don't do it that way. Just
So
do it.
so what?
It's almost like your statement doesn't even matter. Your statement, your opinion, none of those things actually even matter. The only thing that actually matters is the example. And once you have an example,
But I need
then
to.
reverse engineer it and say, does this prove my statement or not?
My brain is on fire because
It's because you're
be,
overthinking it.
because it sounds like you're giving me contradictory things. We talked about myth and about the truth, and you said now you need to come up with the example, so from the myth and the truth.
Hmm.
And this is
No, I
when
didn't
I
say from the myth and the truth.
okay, you didn't say
I
that,
said
but it,
just come up with an example. It doesn't like
okay, it
what you're
follows.
trying to do is you already have a myth and a truth here.
Yeah,
And now you're trying to go look for the example that fits
I
this.
mean, you
What I'm
you
trying
asked
to
me that
no,
isn't
what
didn't
I
you?
ask you to do is this: you should have 100 myth and truths, and next time you come across an example, you should try to figure out this example, which myth truth does it fit into. It's
Okay,
very different than what you're saying. You're just
okay,
working with one myth and truth right now. No, I'm telling you to work with 100 myths and truth, and now make it about the example.
okay.
Do you understand what I
So
mean?
I mean, if you have multiple myths and truths and multiple examples, it's more playful thing because you have more options.
I
Um,
know, but right now you're just so focused on solving a myth and truth with an example that you're not letting yourself play with it.
okay.
Because if you weren't really letting yourself play with it, you might even figure out like there's a completely new lesson or new truth that comes out of this example that you haven't even thought of yet.
Do you think it would be helpful if we put a list of few myths and truths and few
Yeah.
examples?
Why don't you do that? Why don't you make a list of all your myth and truth and examples?
I mean, when you say myth,
I don't do it because like, you know, I'm constantly looking for examples. There's never a day where I'm not looking for an example.
yeah, it's like when we look at the same thing, but we don't see the same thing that we can use. I think this is the problem, and that's why sometimes I sound to my when I see how you react to when I tell you things, I sound to myself ridiculous because to you, when I see you and how you react, it sounds like it's so obvious to you that I feel a little bit stupid because I don't get it. But on the other side, as I'm trying to get it, this is also wrong because I'm trying. And I should try, but not try. So, it's kind of, I don't know, some gymnastic that it sounds obvious.
Yeah, there are some times when you have to try and sometimes you don't. Like, I don't think you should try to get an idea. Like, you should let the ideas come to you. And once you have an idea, then you should try when you write it out. But right now, the stage that we're in, we're not in the writing stage right now. I think right now we're in the like idea stage. Do you understand what I mean? So maybe what you need to
Okay,
do
how do
is you
you
need
hold?
to broaden your scope so that instead of trying to work with one idea at a week, maybe you should be working with like 30 ideas at once. Because not all of these ideas going to come to life. Like what I think most people think that, oh, I have one idea. Now I need to execute this idea. Once I'm done, okay, now I have a new idea. I need to execute this idea. That's how I think most people think.
Yeah.
But the way it actually works is no, you should always have like 100 ideas at all times. And then
How?
out of those 100 ideas, you're working on one of them.
Can you
And then
can you
next week you're like, oh, okay, this idea is not working out. Put it on pause. Let me work with this idea for a little bit. Oh, this isn't really working out. Let's work with this idea for a little. Like that's how I work. I don't wait till I finish one idea before I start a new idea.
Okay. So how can you show a little bit how does it look like when you hold idea in your multiple ideas in your head? So is that like
Like right now, I'm almost positive that some point in the future, in the near future or far future, I don't know. At
okay.
some point, I'm going to come across some example that some therapist tells me or someone tells me, some TED talk or whatever, where they're going to be like, hey, you know how, you know, we we do this to our kids, or we do this in school, or when we were growing up, we this is what we do in school, and we think that there's no problem with that at all, and everything is fine. But the reality is, this is what's happening when that happens to you, and this is the kind of trauma that it's causing in your life, and this is the reason why when you grow up, this happens. Like I'm sure I'm gonna come up. I'm gonna read up on some study or something or some example like that, and then at that moment, I'm gonna be like, "Holy shit! This is such an obvious thing that we should all know how much damage it's doing to us, but we had no idea." Kind of like smoking on the plane or not wearing a seatbelt. Like we had no idea how much damage this was doing to us. Okay,
Hmm.
and once I hear that, I'm gonna be like, a light bulb moment is gonna go off in my head, and I'm gonna be like, oh, this is the myth truth. The myth is we think that some traumatic events are bad, some events are good, or blah blah blah. Blah. But the truth is, you know. But for example, did you ever think that this was bad? Well, this is what it's doing to you. Do you understand what I mean? So
Okay.
I just gave you an example of how, because I had this talk today and we talked about this topic, in a future date, when I hear some example like that, it's going to catch my attention. Do you understand what I mean?
Okay, because so mm, so I have two things.
And that's
One,
just because it's my natural curiosity. I am genuinely curious. And also it's like my need to prove, like, this is why I say the audience is so important, because there are audience out there, there are some people out there who still believe the wrong thing, meaning who still believes that these events are traumatic and these events are good, like these are bad, these are good. That's how they think. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So I need to prove them wrong, right? So how do I prove them wrong? In my mind, I'm going to be constantly looking for the thing, the undeniable proof, where if I proved it to them with this example, there's no way they can argue with me because it's so undeniably true. It's the example is so obviously true that you can't possibly argue with me.
Hmm.
And that's the kind of proof I'm going to be looking for from now on, because I need to prove these people wrong.
Okay. So it looks like you, I still think you do the good prep work. Like y- I- it feels like when you say it like that, simplified like that, there are some people that think that there are traumatic events, and uh, some events that are traumatic and some events that are not traumatic. So when you say it like that, it's much more clear than how it was in my mind. So it means that you kind of digested that idea more before you even go further,
Yeah,
and I didn't.
of
And this
course.
is
But that's going to happen no matter what. Like the
not
more
true.
you learn, the more you observe, the more you learn, the more you're going to learn on top of that. So your knowledge expansion is going to, it's going to keep expanding, and next time when you hear this, it might make more sense to you than, I mean, but that's always going to happen. But you're not going to get there overnight.
I, maybe you do that naturally. I don't think people do that naturally.
Yeah. So you need to do it naturally then. Then that's the practice that we're doing right now. I mean, that's the thing that I want people to practice right now, is that, remember before I said, in order for me to prove these people wrong, because remember, my end goal is to prove you wrong. That's my end goal.
Mm-hmm.
You believe in a myth right now, right? You believe in something wrong right now that I don't believe in, but you believe it. Okay? So now I need to prove to you that you're wrong. And that's like where my the ego for my content creation comes from, right? And then now that I know that I need to prove you wrong every single day, from the moment I wake up until the moment I go to sleep. I'm going to be constantly looking for examples to prove you wrong. Okay. So
Yeah.
every day when I'm listening to podcasts, reading books, I'm like, oh, okay, there's an example that I can prove this person wrong. Oh, there's an example that I can prove this person wrong. Oh, there's an example that I can prove Jelena wrong. Oh, there's an example that I can prove Gigi wrong. So
Yeah.
now that I know all these people that I need to prove wrong, now I'm collecting all these examples and evidence on how I can prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? So I'm constantly gathering evidence 24/7, which is what you're not doing.
Okay. So I think this is the point, son, because there are some steps there, how
Mm-hmm.
to how to process the myth or
Mm-hmm.
the truth or something there, because you obviously did it and I would not do it and probably will not do it in the future, because it's something that
You have to
I
do it constantly.
but if I knew that I should, and how that ending process look like this, there are people that believe that there are traumatic events and that are not traumatic events. So right now I also can search for evidence. I can be open because I have the throne. I have that like simplified place, and I can just look for things in life because I know what I'm searching for and how to use it. But this is not how it looked like naturally. I would
No,
never come to
the
that
one thing that you're not
sentence
doing is
like you did.
what you're doing. What you're not doing. Yes, you're doing that in order for you to learn knowledge and for you to understand something and things like that. But you're not doing it in order to teach. You're only doing it in order to learn. And that's the difference between you and me. For me, I'm constantly gathering evidence and information. And I'm constantly looking for
Mhm.
stuff and constantly trying to connect dots in my head because I'm constantly looking for ways to teach other people stuff. Right. So I'm always from the every day, all day. I have a bunch of people in my head that I need to prove. Like I need to prove them wrong. Okay, I need to prove Gary Vee wrong about this thing. I need to prove Tony Robbins wrong about this thing. I need to prove Crystal wrong about this thing. I need to prove Jelena wrong about this. Like I'm playing a devil's 24/7 devil's advocate, and my job is to literally prove everyone wrong. Okay, I don't know 100% sure if they're wrong or I'm right. Right,
Mhm.
but I'm just gonna try to prove them wrong, even if I don't know for a fact if they're wrong or not. Maybe they're right and I'm wrong. Right. But in the
Yeah.
process of me trying to prove them wrong, sometimes what ends up happening is I end up proving myself wrong. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Okay. Okay, so the difference between you and me, or you say that you're curious, but it's not only that because I'm also curious, but I don't care that much to prove somebody wrong. You have some inner motivation, something inside that is, I don't think it's like completely, it's something that people generally have. Probably you have your inner motivation for to do that. So the question is how to do that if you don't have that inner drive that strong as you have, because
I don't know. I like first of all, I would ask, is that really true? Right? Do do humans not have that inner drive, or did we just kill it? I don't know. That I don't know. First of all, that's a you're making an assumption that I have this special inner drive that other humans don't. I don't know if that's true. Like for
not other
example,
humans like
if you
majority.
see that, let's say you go outside and you see some French person who doesn't speak Serbian who's lost in your city, and there this old lady is lost and is struggling and doesn't know where to go and is like asking people, and you see her struggling, right? Now you know something that she doesn't know, obviously, and you can help her.
Hmm.
Does it drive you to want to help that person?
Yes.
So I would argue that maybe we all have that. Maybe we all have this inner desire to wake people.
It's different when somebody is lost and if somebody has some myth in their mind
I
about
know, but
something.
at the end of the day, it's the same thing. What if what if you see this kid who's doing something bad and he's
It's
doing
not.
drugs and he's hanging out with the wrong crowd, and he doesn't know that that's bad for him, but you know that that's bad for him, so you try to help that person, right? Like that person obviously believe in a wrong myth or they're lost, and you're trying to help them find their way, right? So at the end of the day, do 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 I have some special desire to want to do that other people don't have? I don't know. I don't think so. If I had to take a if I had to answer, I would say no, I don't think so. I think everyone has it. It's just
So
that most people
why
suppress it.
Okay, so why other people have hard time doing that and you don't have that much hard time doing that?
Because I think I think most people in society throughout their life have already created some sort of a credit system in their head of, okay, if I'm going to spend this much hour and this much effort to help this person, then I need to get this much back from this person, and we have an accounting ledger going on in our head of like who we're supposed to help and who we're not supposed to help and blah 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 blah, blah. And we live like our life very in a calculating way like that. That's what I believe.
Hmm.
So I think what happened was, to living in this modern society, we've brainwashed ourselves. We trained our brain to not just naturally follow this instinct of wanting to help somebody or wanting to teach somebody something or wanting to show the way. Even though that could be our natural instinct, what we did was we forced ourselves not to do that. We taught ourselves not to do that. We're like, oh, you want me to do this for you? No, you have to pay me. No, then hire me. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Oh, I'm not gonna give you that answer unless you give me a grade. So we turned ourselves into this very calculating machines, and I think that's the reason why we believe that we don't actually want to do that. But I think deep down inside, I think it's a human desire to want to help other humans and show them the way, right? Like imagine you were living in an island, a deserted island, right? And it was just you and Marco for what for 1 year. You lived just the two of you there for island in the island. So you figure out where to get the water, where all the fruits are. You figure out everything in the island, right? And
Hmm.
then let's say a new person comes into the island, and this person obviously has no idea. They don't know where the water is. They don't know anything, right? Don't you think you would have like a natural instinct to want to help that person and want to show them where the water is, where everything is?
Of course. Of course.
So where does that come from?
It is natural desire to help, I guess.
I actually think that that's where we need to get to. I feel like that's what we're missing in our society today is our natural desire to serve others, to help others, and I think once we can get that back, people will be a lot happier. Because right now, like, I feel like even like when I was younger or something like that, there was this kind of sense of community where people were trying to help others, be of service to others, like go volunteer, and
Hmm.
like it makes them happy and stuff like that. I just feel like that's not really happening anymore, and it's everybody's just like it's all about me. Well, how much money am I gonna make? How many followers am I gonna get?
Yeah.
How is this
So,
gonna help me?
okay. So if I am the same person online and offline,
Hmm.
so and other people, I see so many people in my life that are
That you can
very
help.
that I can help and people that want to help me. So I have this personal experience of that this come naturally. So my question is, if I see a person, I mean, I know what you're going to say. So uh the thing is, what is between me and other person when it comes to carousel and uh, thinking about these concepts, and when I have a live person in front of me? So what is, because there are some additional factors that you obviously don't have, because it looks like online you also have the same drive as you have offline.
But that, I
But
think that's just something that you learn over time. Because like I think that when you're young, right, and you just have a boyfriend and a couple of friends, you think that the only kind of impact that you can make in this world is with just those couple of people, right? And then let's say you have kids and you have employees, then you understand that the impact that you can make is a little bit bigger than that. And then like as you live your life, as you grow older, you start to realize that actually the impact that you can make is bigger than what you thought it was. So for me, so once you start putting out content out there and people start messaging you, DMing you, and you start having conversations with them, and I go on stage and I talk, and then people come up to me afterwards, and you start. So yes, now I'm not going to be able to see the reactions from every person, but I'm going to be able to see enough of a sample that I do understand that it's making a difference, and I understand that it is making an impact, and somewhere in there, my brain probably understands that, oh, I'm actually helping these people. Even though I don't see the reaction right away or something like that, my brain might understand that after a while. And then after, I mean, you've been doing that for a while. After a while, you might go up on stage and you might give a talk, or you might make a piece of content like a carousel, and you still get that same sense of accomplishment as you would coaching somebody one on one. I just think that like your brain understands the difference. If you've been doing it for a while, like if you've been making content for a while and you've been speaking publicly for a while, I think your brain understands that it's the same thing. If you're like helping one client one on one versus you're helping people on a stage or something like that, I think your brain understands that you're essentially doing the same thing, and then you start to get fulfillment from that, and then yeah, and I think from that point on, you don't have to overthink it. I don't really think about, okay, how much impact am I making when I'm sitting here and talking to Jelena versus talking to this other person versus in a small group meeting versus Sunday service. Like in my head, I'm not really calculating, okay, I need to do more of these in order to make more impact. Like that's not how I'm thinking. I'm just doing what feels right at that moment every day. And probably sometimes I'm wasting time. Sometimes probably it'll probably be more helpful for me to go on IG Live or go on stage rather than talking to one small group leader. But I don't care, right? Like
mhm.
it's not going to be perfect, but you know, I just gotta feel it out and I gotta do what I can. So yeah, I mean, I guess I don't over even. So this is what I'm trying to say, Yelena. Like, don't try to overthink anything. Don't try to come up with the examples or myth true sandwiches. Just let it happen automatically. Let it come to you, right? Don't try to come up with, and in order to make this content, I have to have this idea. Like, don't try to do that. Just let it come to you, and just, I guess, be openly curious on how you can serve how, maybe just be curious on how you can serve others and how you can contribute to the world. Just raise a question in your head,
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm Yelena. How what can I do to serve others? What can I do to contribute to this world? Like, just have that, raise that question in your head and live life and see what happens. I have a feeling that the world will answer you. The world will say, oh, Yelena, I think this person needs your help.
When I ask other people what they get out of experience with out of me, so they usually say that I am open, I listen and they feel comfortable. So it kind of, so this is, they feel comfortable to open up. So yeah.
You should, you know what you should do is you should do like group therapy sessions, kind of like what we do in small group meetings where we ask questions,
Mm.
we have discussions in a group. You should try to create your own group, like, you know, in your own membership site, and then just every once a week just meet with these people and have this space where everybody can just share. So think of it as like 12-step meeting, but for people that are
Mm-hmm.
not addicts. And I think that you can probably create a pretty open and safe space for people to come and do that. Start with like 3 people, and then just grow it 4 or 5 people, 6 people, 10 people, 20, and then it'll grow. I think that'll be really it'll work really well for you. Got it?
Got
Okay.
it.
Are
Okay.
you good?
Yeah, I'll think about this. I'll think about this a lot,
Yeah. I think
probably.
it'll be a really good really good sessions if you do that like once a week. Just do it, try it as like a casual thing and then see what happens over time. You can grow it into
Mm-hmm.
like a membership. Okay, Jelena, good chat, good
Thank
talk.
you, son.
Good to see you again. Thank you, everyone, and see you
Thank you
next
very
week.
much.
Bye.
See you.